nice to be here with all of you. And all of you includes the Living Discipleship group who's here. Is there still an echo? Maybe there is. And it also includes the yoga teacher training group, which is here. And I see Ariel and Anna there, our Kriya Bans from Pittsburgh, I hear. So it's nice seeing you both. What I want to do today is, of course, start with Whispers from Eternity. Now, for some reason, I'm feeling that I'm hearing an echo, but that might just be me. So when I opened this book this morning in the vestry, this showed up, and I thought this was perfect. Demand for union with the Almighty. O Father, behold me through the pores of the sky. Smile at me through the twinkling stars. Strengthen me through the sun. Calm my feelings through the moon. Caress me through the breeze. Love me through my love. Throb in me through my heart. Breathe thine immortality through this mortal frame of mine. Speak through my voice. Help others through my hands. Use my mind to inspire them. Breathe through my breath. For within this fragile vial, thou alone canst sing thy complete eternal song. And as I read this right now, I didn't think about this until this moment. Most prayers are about what we can do for God. And this entire prayer is about asking God to do many things for us. You know, if you read each and every line, you are saying to God, why don't you do this and do this and do this? Breathe through me, work through me. And this is a nice way to tune into the topic of self-reliance versus self-reliance. Just tuning into our higher self. What I want to try to do today, because we have a Living Discipleship group and we also have the Yoga Teacher Training group, to try to share something that might relate to both these words. Now, oftentimes when you try to do too many things, it all tanks. And I hope that will not happen. But the inspiration, you know, we have to act. We have things to do. Every day there's tasks, responsibilities. Whether we rely on the little self or the higher self, we have to keep going. And so I wanted, because one of the USPs of yoga, the science of yoga, is that it is practical. I wanted to share something that would be practical and that would point our way towards relying more and more on the higher self, or tell us whether we are relying on our higher self or not. And I wanted to start that with sort of an impractical example. And by impractical, I mean, you know, there are some things that the philosophers enjoy and some things that the people who are practical enjoy. And there's not always an overlap. Now, there's one story. It's perhaps the most often told story or analogy in the world of Ananda. All of you must have heard it. And it was only recently when I was tuning into it, I realized this is a philosopher's delight. But for the practical man of the world, so to speak, it doesn't really give that person much. It's the story of the horse. How many people have heard this story of the horse many, many times, where the poor horse is used as an example to tell you the 4 different functions of the mind. How many have heard that story? And the story goes, when you see a horse, the mind, which is blind, reflects the horse without knowing what it's seeing. It simply transmits that information. Then the intellect comes in. It analyzes it and says, this is a horse. Then the ego comes in and says, oh, this is my horse. And then this is the great ending of that story. Can you believe it? Then the heart comes in and says, how happy am I that this is my horse? And the story goes, this is where you get enmeshed in delusion. This is the reason this story is told, that it's when the heart enters and says, how happy I am that this is my horse, that we get enmeshed in delusion. And I've heard that story for 13 years, and I thought, what a nice ending. But if you ask a horse owner, he'll say, great, but what do I do with my horse? The story never tells me that. And, you know, replace the horse with something else. You have a baby. You have a cat. You have a career. You are a chef. You have a spouse. Yes, the mind comes in, here's somebody. Then the intellect comes in, this is a spouse. And then the ego comes in, this is my spouse. And then if you say, how happy, or my baby, how happy am I to see my baby, you're caught. And that's where it ends. But what is the mother supposed to do? What happens to the baby? That's the question. How am I supposed to relate to the baby? How am I supposed to be a mother? And that is the question that needs to be answered for the practical person. And luckily, the science of yoga gives an answer. That story is given for one reason, to explain a peculiar sutra from the Yoga Sutras, the very first one, or the second one, Yogas Chitta Vritti Nirodha. Because it says yoga is the neutralization of the vortices of feeling of the heart, which is staggering because we often think of yoga and meditation as calming the mind. And so suddenly from calming the mind, the whole goal of yoga has transferred to calming the waves of feeling in the heart. And an explanation is needed. Why? And so this whole analogy of the four aspects of the larger mind and understanding what the heart means. It's the feelings when they get enmeshed. That is when we start getting caught into delusion. And this is the whole premise of the science of yoga. Now, if you remember, Murli, when he did his Spiritual Renewal Week talk, he quoted one of the sutras from the Yoga Sutras, the 12th one of the first chapter, where Patanjali says, and he gives the answer, the vrittis are neutralized by two things. He used two words, abhyasa and vairagya. Abhyasa is the practice of the yogic techniques especially. And vairagya is a very interesting word. Generally, it's translated into renunciation and non-attachment, but its exact translation is dispassion. That's the literal translation. In fact, as Master said this, if you study Yoga Sutras and the Gita side by side, you can see a one-to-one mapping between many of the principles. In the Gita, there is another shloka, chapter 6, 35, where Krishna says, the mind is very hard to control, but by the practice of abhyasa and vairagya, you can still it. Exactly those same words. In fact, I was thinking, but when Patanjali was writing his Yoga Sutras and he wrote his particular sutra, probably Vyasa materialized to him and said, copycat. You copied exactly what I said. But we know Abhyasa, we know practice of the teachings. I wanted to focus on that second one, dispassion, vairagya, because it's a rarely used word. When is the last time you used the word dispassion in a sentence, in a letter you wrote? Or think about all the documentaries and movies you've seen, even altruistic documentaries. How many times is that word dispassion used? It's not yet in the vocabulary of this world at this time. Passion is. Now, dispassion quite literally means absence of passion. And this is supposed to be one of the highest qualities of the yogi. And something is lacking there because, if you write in your CV, I'm dispassionate about my job. You study Patanjali and you study the Gita, and in your CV you say, that's your most people say, I'm passionate about doing things. But now you say, I'm dispassionate about my job, you never get that call for the job interview. Or you look at your spouse, now you're done YTT, you go home. I'm just so dispassionate about us now. And he'll go to the dictionary, he'll go online. What is dispassion? Absence of passion. And, it won't be smooth sailing from there. So that word has to be understood. And what happens is, we have to understand, absence of passion, what the dictionary explains, is only one part of the picture, one small part. There's so much more to it. Now, this ties to the horse analogy, When we say to calm the vrittis, we have to practice dispassion. It's very similar to what Swamiji used to say about his own life. He used to say, I feel Swami Kriyananda is simply an event I'm responsible for. That's a dispassionate statement. But it has to be understood in the right way, because for most people, dispassion means absence of passion. You become cold, emotionless, feelingless, disinterested, uninterested. I just show up as an automaton. It feels like I'm becoming an automaton. And that really is not true. So I want to share here a few aspects of dispassion When practiced correctly, what do those mean? Now here's a fun exercise for those who would like to do it, and thanks to our AI bots, you can do it probably easily with our teachings and our writings, or you can do a simple search. If you study the Bhagavad Gita that Swami wrote, the essence of the Bhagavad Gita is one of the textbooks of yoga, and search for the word passion. Swami never uses it in a positive way. Very interesting. I have here a few examples of how Swami uses the word passion, and let's see what it, from the Bhagavad Gita. Such egoic qualities as selfishness, hatred, passion, greed, personal ambition, covetousness, jealousy, and anger are weights that prevent the balloon of awareness from soaring up into the sky of spirit. Then one of the sutras or shlokas from the Gita, know the quality of rajas, as imbued with passion, which activates strong desires and attachments and binds one to the body by intense expectations it develops in him through his restlessness. And the third one, on this field of battle, Kurukshetra, the war constantly rages between passion, desire, attachment, and other human delusions. That's where passion is grouped into, on the one side. And on the other, their opposite aspirations, devotion, non-attachment, and all the virtues. So clearly, passion is not something, as we realize, as we read these things, is not something we necessarily want to tune into. But what about passion for good things? Should we be passionate about being disciples? Passionate about being yoga teachers? Passionate about all the service we do for Ananda? You can feel the answer out in your mind, but as it says in the Gita, the consequence of being passionate over time is the intense restlessness it develops. Now, Yogananda gave a wonderful story. There's a wonderful story in Conversations with Yogananda where this is explained. And Swamiji writes, the master Yogananda favored calm, determined renunciation over emotional world rejection. When one feels emotional rejection, there usually lingers inside him also a subconscious attraction. During a discussion with me at his desert retreat, he told me the following story. A very interesting story, actually. I met a young woman years ago in Mexico City. She taught yoga and was very committed to this path. One day I asked her, how do you feel about marriage? Her answer quite surprised me. I have given my life to God, she fairly shouted with intense vehemence. And I will continue to serve him alone, without a mate, faithfully, devotedly, every year of my life forever until I die. Unfortunately, I raised my voice and we have such a nice sound crew, they just lower it through their microphones. So some of the effect is lost. Anyway, it's just funny. My goodness, I exclaimed, this is Yogananda. Why that emotion? One must renounce feelings also. I was going to compliment you on your spiritual commitment. Seek God lovingly and one-pointedly, but seek him also with deep calmness. And in this story, Swami Yogananda is giving a few qualities that are relevant to correct understanding of dispassion. As he said, seek God lovingly and one-pointedly, but also with deep calmness. Remember those few adjectives, because they are very, very important. And then, as I was saying, it's very evident from what Swami wrote in those lines from the Gita that passion is on the Kaurava side. The Kaurava side is the enemy side in the Bhagavad Gita. The Pandava side is the side we want to be on. We all agree. Whether we feel dispassion is something we want or not, everybody here agrees. The Pandava side is the side we want. And what is the Pandava side without the Pandavas? They are the main players in that story. They represent the awakened chakras. Who gives birth to the Pandavas? There's a mother, there's two mothers. The first two Pandavas have one, Madri, and the other three Pandavas, the last two Pandavas, the youngest two have one, and the eldest three have one other, Kunti. And as Yogananda said, all these names, these characters represent particular qualities. And what does Kunti represent? Does somebody know? You can shout out the answer. Dispassion. The power of dispassion. There comes that word again. And Madhuri represents attachment to the power of dispassion, a little bit lower octave. So we all want the Pandavas, but the quality that gives birth to the Pandavas is the power of dispassion. And so she is very central. We don't tune into her because she's not one of the warriors. See, because when we think about the Bhagavad Gita or the Mahabharata, we are interested in the warriors. Which side fought which side, which warrior fought which warrior, and so on and so forth. But it's the power of dispassion, the power to summon spiritual energy. That's what Yogananda said. Dispassion gives you the ability to summon spiritual energy. And what are the fruits of dispassion? What are all these 5 chakras? The powers to practice the yamas and niyamas, the lower 2 chakras. Fiery self-control. Heart's devotion. You'd think dispassion is cold. But it's birth. It gives birth to the heart's devotion, bhima. And calmness in psychological battle. Dispassion starts sounding better and better. It seems like a quality we all want. We want to be devoted to our children. We want to be calm when we are raising our children or navigating our careers. We want fiery self-control because we want to lead by example when we are parents or when we are spouses or whatever the example is. And we want to practice the yamas and niyamas. So more and more we start realizing that dispassion is a central quality, a good quality, one of the best qualities. Still don't include it in your CV. Because unless they watch this particular lecture or read some of Swami's books, you won't get that call for an interview if you say, I'm dispassionate about my job. But coming back, with dispassion, there's one more quality that is very, very important. And Swami shares this. This is again in the essence of the Bhagavad Gita. And he says, maybe I didn't have it here. Yeah, he says, in answer to those vairagis, we have a nice vairagi here. And the definite meaning of vairagis, he explains, persons of supreme dispassion. In answer to those vairagis, moreover, who say that one should not enjoy anything in God's creation, their counsel might even be considered an insult to God. They overlook the fact that it was God who made everything through his instrument Prakriti, which is divine nature. How can he be pleased with anyone for despising his handiwork? Surely the best attitude, and one which Krishna himself recommends, is to enjoy inwardly with the joy of God. And so the right practice of dispassion has calmness, expansiveness, the ability to enjoy inwardly with the joy of God. And, isn't this what we want as a yogi? Even if we had a horse? And isn't this what Swami meant when he said, I only think Swami Kriyananda is an event I'm responsible for? He was very joyful, he was very engaged, he was very loving, he was very creative, he was dynamic, he had initiative, but still, in part of his heart, as you'll see, the song we'll sing after this Sunday service, I've passed my life as a stranger, Lord. That was who he was. His heart was completely free. We can do. Last week I visited Jairam, and there's a little yard where you can walk with those in prison. And as he and I were walking, I was saying, I'm going to talk, I have this service to give, I'm thinking about talking about dispassion. And I shared a few points I was making to him. And he said, that's wonderful. I said, do you think this will resonate? He said, yeah, I think this is very important. I realize now that dispassion makes our heart oceanic. That's how we put it. If we are passionate, we are a wave. As Swami said, it's a string without the sounding board. But the same things that we have to do, we can do with an oceanic character, realizing we are a part of a bigger, greater reality. And that is what dispassion gives us. And so, as Yogananda said, again, to clarify what dispassion means, he said, the lazy, negligent person isn't ambitious to please God by good actions on earth, so he has to come back until he learns to work with the one purpose of pleasing God. The egotist, on the other hand, who works only to please himself, becomes involved in an endless net of desires, from which he can extricate himself only after many incarnations. Therefore, you must neither be idle and absent-minded, nor egotistically ambitious, but you should be divinely ambitious to work and play on earth with the right attitude of mind as the divine director wishes you to. And so, living for God alone, tuning into the reality that we are instruments and working from that reality cheerfully, ambitiously, joyfully is what dispassion really means. And if we do that, isn't that our path? We do this already. This actually defines Ananda, because Ananda means joy and people are joyful in their service. But it's sometimes nice to bring these things into focus and be aware of what these qualities really mean. Now, how do we develop dispassion? Now, this is going to be fun, I hope. Now that everybody's on dispassion side now, I hope everybody feels that, maybe we started by thinking devoid of passion, no way, I want nothing to do with it. But now we are all on dispassion side. How do we develop it? Again, you can go to the great Bhagavad Gita and look at the characters. Kunti was raised by a king whose name was Kunti Bhoja. And Bhoja quite literally means something that sustains. Bhojan in Sanskrit and in English is food that you take, that which sustains. And Kunti Bhoja literally means, the translation of that Sanskrit word is, he who sustains, allows Kunti to grow, nurture. And what does Kunti represent? The power of dispassion. So Kunti Bhoja represents that power, that ability, that quality which will allow dispassion to thrive and grow. And does anybody know what Kunti Bhoja represents? Very interesting quality. Asana. Fantastic, isn't it? Now, most people, when they think of asana, they think keep the spine erect. And that's not wrong, but it's too physical of a definition. All the 8 limbs of Patanjali are states of consciousness. In fact, if you read the sutra itself, there's no word called spine. Sthiram Sukham Asanam. Sthira Sukham Asanam. That's how it says. 3 words. Patanjali is terse. He probably didn't have a lot of paper to write on, or he was scrounging for paper, who knows. But Sthiram Sukham Asanam. There's no word called the spine. Sthiram means centered. Sukham means relaxed and easeful. That is asana. What is our center? The spine. Being centered in the spine in a joyful way is asana. It's a state of consciousness. And that's why Master used to say, live always in the spine. In fact, I think the Living Discipleship group has a class called Living from the Spine or Living in the Spine. I saw is that right, Maria? Something like that? Living from the inside or living from your center. There was something called living from somewhere which I felt was right. So it was there. I don't know the exact name. But these are different ways of saying the same thing. Asana means living from the spine as our center. It's not just about keeping your spine erect, because if you practice asana right, you develop dispassion. There are many people in the US military, celebrities, politicians who walk with an erect spine but don't have dispassion. So more is needed. Keeping the spine erect is the first step because it allows us to be centered. But living from the spine, acting from the spine, training ourselves to do this more and more is the practice of asana. And the more we live from the spine, what happens? We naturally, as a consequence, the more we are centered between those dualities in our own center, we develop vairagya, which is dispassion. And when vairagya develops, all those wonderful qualities of the chakras start developing. And when the chakras start developing, gradually they raise the kundalini. And when kundalini is raised, she brings her father-in-law, Drupada. You know what Drupada represents? Extreme dispassion or supreme dispassion. It takes dispassion to its completeness, where you see Divine Mother in everything. When cancer comes, you see Divine Mother in it. When financial devastation comes, you see Divine Mother in it. When somebody slaps you, you see Divine Mother in it. Everywhere you see, 1,000 Vedas do declare Divine Mothers everywhere. That is the kind. You see Divine Mother in your horse, and in your baby, and in your spouse. And everything can be taken care of as part of that one great whole. And then what happens? We start becoming more and more self-reliant. We are reliant on our higher self with a capital S, because as the Gita says, the final realization comes that there's nothing else. Is that one, as that particular prayer from Whisper said, you realize that it's the divine power alone that exists and throbs as you, throbs as other human beings, throbs as complicated situations, and to the degree that we are in tune with it, brings us inner and outer freedom. So let me see if there was anything else that I wanted to share about. Well, I don't, so. So we'll bring the Living Discipleship group up after the offertory, okay?
God is our Father, our Mother too. God is our dearest treasure. God's ever near, the one friend who loves us without any measure. Of his dreams our love was made, only from him is love repaid. Let us in gladness all live for him, serve him in every season, serve him with thought, with hand and limb, love him without any reason. God befriends us as we are, fools we that hold his love afar. God is our Father, our Mother too. God is our dearest treasure. God's ever near, the one friend who loves us without any measure. Of his dreams our love was made, only from him is love repaid. Let us in gladness all live for him, serve him in every season, serve him with thought, with hand and limb, love him without any reason. God befriends us as we are, fools we that hold his love afar. God befriends us as we are, fools we that hold his love afar.
I've passed my life as a stranger, Lord, roamed far in foreign lands, far, Lord, far, too far. Only he who knows he's far from home, only he, Lord, understands. Only he who knows he's far from home feels the earth and understands. Sometimes a stranger did take me in, then love I thought was near. Love, Lord, where is love? As the winds upon the desert sand whisper hope, then disappear. As soft winds breathe on the desert sand, so love sighs, then disappears. Sometimes a child laughed, and I did pause, and dreamed of joys at home. Joys, Lord, only a dream. For what joy is there without your smile? Empty like the ocean foam. For what joy is there without your smile? You're the sea all else is foam. How long must I be a wanderer, Lord? You know where I belong. You know, Lord, yes, you know. Home is where my Lord's sweet presence is. I've grown tired of strangers' songs. Home is where my Lord's sweet presence is. Bless me that I hear your song.